the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Hello,
Where'd you get that idea, Hal?
and welcome back to another episode of Melchizedek Chronicles. How was that for a different change of intros than my usual ones that I do? I thought you might find that interesting. In case you don't know what that's from, that's off the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick in 1969. Just so happens that's the same exact year. This is coincidence, of course. Same exact same exact year that we went to the moon. Okay, if you believe that. So in 1969, this movie came out, and it has features, like my shirt shows here, the HAL 9000 Logic Memory Systems. HAL 9000 was the first AI. Okay. Of course, you know, first AI that came out in the movies, I should say. First artificial intelligence. So they were thinking about AI back in 1969, right? Of course, that was in a movie, and yeah. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the HAL 9000. Again, I've mentioned it before, and the fact that it's AI. And on a side note, the AI, of course, malfunctioned. And in this particular scene, the one that you heard there, that's where it locked. It already had killed everybody else on the ship. And one of the astronauts had flown away in space there. It kicked him, somehow got him out. So Dave, the other astronaut, went and retrieved him and was trying to get back into the ship and wanted back in. And, of course, Hal refused to let him in. So, so AI and HAL 9000, and he malfunctioned. So, we were talking about AI all the way back in 1969. And that's back whenever we had the famous phone call that Nixon made to the moon, which was 250,000 miles away, right? So, anyway, the main thing I want to talk about today was DARPA. DARPA. In case you've never heard of DARPA, it stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And you'll see DARPA in a lot of movies, okay, a lot of sci-fi movies, and it's always something weird. Well, DARPA is real. It was founded in 1958. Okay, so it was founded 10 years before the movie with HAL 9000 in it. 11 years, I guess. But it was also founded out right about the same time as NASA. Well. Remember me telling you lots of these things came out in the late 50s? When NASA started shooting rockets out to the Bermuda Triangle, that's when the whole Bermuda Triangle thing showed up that says you don't go out there because it's dangerous. Keeping you away from it. They want you to see the rockets floating around out there or sinking, whatever. Well, it says here that I did my research on this. I had looked into DARPA, and the reason I was going to bring this up has to do with one of their projects they came up with, been a few years ago, but we're going to get into that towards the end here. So anyway, DARPA was originally named ARPA before they put the D on there. So it was just Advanced Research Projects Agency. And then they kind of put the defense fence word on the front of it there. But supposedly it was founded in the response to the Soviet Union launching Sputnik, which was the very first supposed satellite sent to outer space. So I don't believe, Sputnik may have been something. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't in outer space. They probably shot something up, hit the firmament, and fell back down. I can believe that. Or they shot something and it scraped up against the firmament and came back down. I can believe that. So, its mission, DARPA's mission, has been to prevent technological surprise and to create breakthroughs. So, they're out there trying to, I guess, just do all kinds of stuff. So I thought I would kind of let you know exactly some of the stuff that DARPA has done. And the biggie, which is how you're listening to this podcast right now, is the internet and networking. So initially in 1969, there's that number again. So we had 2001: A Space Odyssey filmed with the HAL 9000 AI in 1969. We had the moon mission, where the first man walked on the moon in 1969. And we had DARPA, which then was called ARPA, founded a little thing called ARPANET in 1969. And it's the direct ancestor of the modern internet. So before it was the internet, it was ARPANET. And so basically, DARPA, they figured out or funded this first packet switching technology, which has to do with the internet, TCP, IP, that kind of stuff. It's called TCP, IP protocols. I used to be into networking and could tell you, all about that stuff, but it's kind of disappeared out of my mind now these days. But anyway, it has to do with the foundation of internet connection. It's how computers talk to each other is, TCP/IP. IP stands for Internet Protocol. So anyway, so they figured that out. They got it funded, they got it started, and then it grew into what it is today. So you have DARPA to thank for that. Okay. Another little thing that DARPA came out with is called GPS. Ever heard of that? Global Positioning System. So, according to DARPA, they helped develop prototypes of satellite-based navigation in the 1970s. So shortly after 1969, we've already supposedly went to the moon, so now we're going to put satellites in outer space. Okay, if you believe that. Now, I'm sure they did something with it because, the very first, as they called GPS or Global Positioning System, was land-based. It still is. It was towers placed all over, and it simply triangulates where you're at. That's what it is today. They just have better towers and better triangulation systems. So you pick up your phone, it triangulates, it connects to several towers, it knows exactly where you're at. Has nothing to do with outer space. But, to keep this, what I call the satanic agenda running, we have to pretend that it's in outer space. So instead of just saying, hey, that's that tower over there, and you see that tower over there, those two towers are connected to your phone, and it will tell us exactly where you're at. Instead of saying that, they say, oh, well, we've got a satellite running around in outer space, and it tells us where you're at. Okay? So if you believe that nonsense. So anyway, DARPA helped develop the GPS, which is land-based. And it says initially this GPS was used obviously for military. It was used for submarines, aircraft, and missiles so they could figure that out. But it became a civilian GPS after a while that we use today. Now, supposedly the GPS that we're using today is not near as accurate as the one the military uses. So they've kind of dumbed it down a little bit where it'll show you, within 8 or 9 feet or 3 or 4 feet, wherever you're at. but supposedly the military's version will hone in on like within a foot. So they know exactly where you're at. And they do. And I saw this, that they've got a new video out I saw here a while back where they were explaining to Dinesh D'Souza, which is, he's on X. He's a popular guy. They showed him, he was talking in this guy, in this room with this guy, had all these computers, and there was a crime that took place several years ago where somebody got shot in this store. Well, they went back and they looked at all the GPS or cell phone data, and it shows all the cell phones that were in that area at the time. And it just so happens these two cell phones showed up, and they traced those two cell phones to these two criminals. And sure enough, it was those two criminals that shot and killed the guy, and they were the only two in the area, so the only two that could have done it. Assuming you're carrying a cell phone, which most everybody is, right? So they're tracking you through the cell phones in real time if they want to. That's how, like on these current type shootings that we have, with Charlie Kirk and others, they have the ability to see every cell phone, where it was at, where it went, everything. Unless these people are using, burner cell phones that are not connected to them, or they don't carry a cell phone. That'd be the only other way they're not being tracked. So they've got you tracked, by the way, and it goes a whole lot more into that. But so you've got, DARPA into GPS, no big deal. DARPA supposedly also funded and came up with stealth technology. So they supposedly funded the early stealth, which came up with different planes that had it on there, and they came up with innovations in radar-absorbing materials for these aircraft. Supposedly DARPA did that as well. Okay. So now we come up into some of the stuff that affects me and you a little more. They came up with AI and machine learning. Okay, so some of the stuff that they supposedly came out with is speech recognition, machine translation, and early AI. And of course, they say that they were supporting AI back in the 60s. So I didn't even know AI existed in the 60s. But see, we don't know what the government's doing behind our backs. We have no idea. However, like I said, they came out in the movies in 1969 with the HAL 9000. And this thing was beyond any type of AI that we have today. Okay, this thing is running the show and making decisions. It's everything has to go through it before anything can get done. So they were talking about that in 1969. And here we are all the way into 2025, and now we've got AI in our computer, chatbots and ChatGPT and Grok and whatever they're calling it, and they've got this stuff doing it. They're talking about, AI being your doctor and AI be doing this and that. Well, you wouldn't want the HAL 9000 being your doctor. I promise you that. I mean, he decides he don't like you anymore. He just unalives you just that quick. Turns your oxygen off or whatever. So I don't think I'd want AI running anything like that. But so today's autonomous systems, drones, and even personal assistants like, Siri, that kind of stuff, trace back to these DARPA-backed AI projects. So DARPA's been at this for a long time. Then in 2000s, 2015-ish, DARPA Robotics comes online, and they have and help develop these robots, the ones that look like the dogs that are running around, called Boston Dynamics. Supposedly, Trump had one here a while back patrolling his property, and it looks like a little robot dog, and it's running around. It's got cameras and stuff. That's a DARPA thing. They helped get that going. So, Boston Dynamics, I didn't know they were with DARPA, but apparently DARPA either funded them or is helping them or something. And they've come out with some very impressive looking, they look kind of like a dog. They're making some bigger ones too, and they can pack stuff on the back like a little pack mule, and they can put guns on the back and all kinds of stuff. So, I can only imagine one of those things showing up and trying to kill you when it goes insane. Supposedly, DARPA also, they had a challenge they put out called the Grand Challenge, and what it did is it helped get this autonomous driving vehicles going, and they did that in the 2000s. So supposedly because of DARPA and their programs with autonomous vehicles, that's probably where you have the self-driving Fords now, called Ford Blue, I think it is. You've got Teslas that are self-driving. And over here where I'm at, Walmart, home office is right up the road. And, of course, they're using it going back and forth between Walmart and their facilities, where they have all the stuff stored. They're going back and forth, and there's some autonomous trucks going back and forth with no drivers. I think it's stupid. I think all it is getting rid of people and their jobs, People are, oh, man, autonomous. Yeah, but now you don't have a job. I mean, it's doing the driving. You're sitting at home. So I'd rather have a person driving. At least you could make some decent decisions. These things, they decide to go off the rails, they can just plow into somebody at any moment. Okay. So, of course, they also, DARPA, funded microchips for computers. So, much of the modern-day computer technology we have is supposedly from DARPA. DARPA also funded and helped do the drones. They've got the development of unmanned aerial vehicles like the Predator and the Global Hawk, which is, the ones they're flying around and blowing people up with constantly. Let's see. Yeah. Now, apparently DARPA's into medicine as well. And so it says they're into this gene editing, which we know what they're doing with that, right? So gene editing, synthetic biology, and neural interfaces, which is supposedly what Musk is doing, right? You know how he's got this neural interface going on? Okay, well, DARPA's into neural interfaces. And because DARPA's into neural interfaces, that's why Elon Musk is into neural interfaces, okay? And let me explain to you what I mean by that. What we have now is we have these people set up, they're puppets. They're figureheads. Just like Biden and the crime family, just like tons of them. I believe that Musk is one of those people. He is a person, that came from wherever, and they have fabricated all of this stuff he's done. They've fabricated this genius IQ, and they put him up as let's just say as a talking head, so everybody can say Musk, 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 but really these guys are behind it. Okay? And I'm gonna get to a little bit more on that in a second, because see, he's into these neural interfaces, so making man and machine together or whatever. But really it's people like this, like DARPA. They're behind the scenes. Now, I've talked about this all the time. They don't want to be out there where people can see them. They want to hide in the back. Now, they'll let Musk go out in front, and he'll claim he's doing that. Oh, yeah, let everybody pretend he's a genius and he came up with it, right? Right. Really, we're doing it, but we need a face man, okay? We need somebody to get out in the public that can take the fall for it, too. He can take the praise, but he can also take the fall. So we'll stick him out there, and we'll give him a bunch of fake credentials and just spew it all over the news, and everybody believes it. Okay? Because he's a genius. He's genius. Okay, so who's that? I believe DARPA's really behind it. So not only that, they've come up with prosthetic limbs with brain control interfaces. So this is another deal. So they're already into robotics. Okay? They love robots. But they want you to be a robot. So, and of course, it sounds great. Let's say you've got your arm cut off. and you can't move anything. You can't move your arm because you don't have an arm. So like, here, let's put this robotic arm on there, and we'll plant a chip in your brain, and you think about your arm moving, and it moves. It's a robot arm, right? Sounds great, but that's kind of the beginning probably of cutting your whole body off and turning you into some kind of a robot with a brain, I guess. That's what I would say. So they're behind all that stuff because they're also behind gene editing, which means, hey, we don't like your gray beard, so we're going to edit your genes so it doesn't happen again. We're gonna start trying to play God, in other words. Okay. But see, then they go on. Guess what else they're into? Vaccines. Oh, absolutely. So it says, they're into programs like ADEPT and P3 accelerated vaccine technology, which was used in CV-19. Of course it was. So they're probably behind that as well. I mean, surely you don't really think it came from a bat, right? And surely you don't believe that Fauci has got enough brain power to get anything done, do you? Okay. Fauci's another one of those puppets, a face man. In fact, they show up pictures and stuff of his desks in his office. He has murals and self-portraits of himself all over. Okay. Think about that for a second. He's supposedly a doctor sitting at his desk that has to do with these vaccines. And instead of having a picture, I don't know, of maybe the human anatomy or some kind of a DNA strand, anything, picture of him, a picture of himself, a mural. That's called narcissist. So he's the perfect patsy to stick up there because all he's interested in is himself, his popularity, and his pocketbook. And they took care of that. They're like, don't worry. You can put your pictures and we'll plaster your ugly face all over the world. And the guy looks like a dog in the face or a mouse. He's hideous. Well, because he's full of the devil. He's either demon-possessed or he's, one of the two. So he looks like some kind of a rat in the face, an ugly rat. Okay, and I don't claim to be a good-looking guy, but I don't look like an ugly, flea-infested rat like this guy does. Okay? So he looks like a flea-infested rat, and so he's supposedly really smart. See, he's a doctor. And so he gets on there and says, trust me, I am science. Well, you probably didn't come up with a squatting thing. Now, DARPA probably did, but they needed a face man to push it. Okay, so you're a perfect face man because you're a narcissist. You surround yourself with images of yourself. All you want to be is seen on TV and have your pocket filled with money. So you're the perfect face man. Now, if anybody could ever get anything done, you're also the perfect fall guy. See? Because if it was up to me, I would put you in prison. And, of course, if it was up to me, I would have you put to death. Just because the simple fact all these people died and you're claiming responsibility, then you can face responsibility for it. So I'd make sure that you were executed for your crimes. But see, if that ever happens, it will be you that's executed, not the guys back here that actually push the stuff. Okay? That's how that works. And we're going to get to some more of that here in just a minute because it's really interesting. So hold on a second. So, space technologies. According to this, early satellite technology and space-based sensors are all DARPA backed. So, when you read something like that, you have to understand, I believe there is no space like what we're told. There's a firmament. God put it up there. So when they say space-based, this could mean high altitude on a balloon. It could mean high altitude on some type of a high-altitude airplane, what they call a space plane. Okay, when they call it a space plane, that just means that it flies up really high, like 160,000 feet versus 50 or 60,000 feet or 30,000 feet. So they're calling that space because they want you to believe in outer space. Doesn't really mean it went into a vacuum. I mean, there is no vacuum. It doesn't mean anything. But when you hear space plane, you assume outer space because of the propaganda you've been taught your whole entire life, and because of the propaganda that they continue to push. Okay, anything to get you away from God. Now, if anybody thought for a second that DARPA was is going to mention God, you're wrong. I mean, they're coming up with some great technologies, and God is never going to be mentioned in any of this stuff. Truth be known, the devil's probably behind it. I'm sure he is. He's probably telling some of these guys, or some of his fallen angels, they're probably telling these guys how to do this stuff, the higher ups. Okay, but they're so far back. I mean, you'll never find them. Okay, only person you're going to see is the fall guys, the face men. Okay, let's see here. So some of their other innovations, miscellaneous innovations, as we call it, is speech-to-text systems, which is precursors to Siri. Okay, so in other words, hey Siri, do this. Hey Siri, do that. Which is another one, Alexa. Hey Alexa, do this. They're always listening to every word you say, monitoring everything you do and say. Okay. They've also got some kind of what they call it, micro-electromechanical systems, which are sensors used in smartphones. Okay, so we know everybody's got a smartphone. Yeah, virtual reality, remember that? Which is, the thing that Meta came out with his Facebook. Virtual reality, where you can put on goggles and supposedly walk around in virtual reality, to get instead of living out here in the real world, put on your fake goggles and hook up to the computer and run around in there with some crappy simulation, and, you can name yourself and do whatever. Kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing. You can be whatever you want to be in this virtual reality. So if you're some nasty perverted man, you can go in there and you can be a little girl, and then you can hopefully start talking to other little girls and little boys. See, filth, devil, demonic, but DARPA. All right, and then of course we've got brain-machine interfaces, which we've already talked about, Neuralink. But what's interesting to me, and this is what I wanted to really say about DARPA. This is the grand finale about DARPA, if you will, for what I have to say, in my very limited knowledge of it. Okay, come to find out, DARPA started a thing called LifeLog. Okay, and according to the documentation I've read, it's one of its most controversial projects. So obviously, if you start talking about surveillance, data privacy, even social media, guess who's behind it? DARPA. Okay. So, DARPA, in 2003, launched a thing called LifeLog. And it was aimed to create a basically comprehensive digital diary of a person's entire life, from birth to death. Okay? So the brains at DARPA, whoever they are, fallen angels, I'm sure, they want to be like God. Well, God knows everything. He's omnipresent. He knows what you're thinking. He can read your mind. Okay? He knows what you've been doing. He knows what you're going to do. But old Satan, he doesn't know that. He's just an angel, a fallen angel. That's all he is. Oh, he's the head fallen angel, but he's at the end of the day, he's a fallen angel. Okay? They're not omnipresent. They don't know everything. But he wants to know everything. Of course he does. So here's where this LifeLog comes in. Now, you've already heard in the past how they're recording all your, they're recording everything on the phones. Siri's recording everything. The other one's recording everything, you know. Hey Siri, hey whatever. They're all recording everything. The camera's on your phones, everything on your phone. The mic is recording everything. That's how it is. You can sit down with your buddy and have a conversation about tacos, and the very next time you get on your phone, every advertisement will be for tacos. Okay? That is a fact. Nobody can dispute that. It's listening. Somebody's listening to what it's listening to. Okay? So they came out with a thing called LifeLog openly, which was their mistake. Their goal was to capture and store and analyze everything about an individual's life and experiences. Okay? So now some of these things that they're monitoring was your web browsing history, all of your phone calls and emails, every word you've ever said on it, all your purchases. What have you purchased, when, where, how, why, and with what? All of the transactions you've done. Okay? All of the media consumption. So in other words, anything you've watched on TV, any music you listen to, and anything you've read. They wanted to know your biometric data. While this is happening, they want to know your heart rate, your blood pressure. So they're trying to monitor, they're doing health monitoring. So you know when you buy those little, the smart watches that monitor your pulse and your heart rate and all that stuff, it lets you know how many times you roll over in bed at night. It lets you know how many times you got up, all that stuff. It's not the only one monitoring it. It's being sent to somebody else. They want to know every move you make. They want to know even when you're sleeping. They want to know what you do in your sleep. How many times did you turn over? Everything. That's all part of this, okay? Of course, there's GPS location and tracking, and they don't need to stick one on you because you have your phone in your hand 24/7, or you have your smartwatch on, or you're in your car, and so they can track everywhere you go. Nobody ever goes anywhere without any of these devices, so they know exactly what you're doing and where you're at. And then, of course, social interactions and conversations. They want to know who you're talking to, what you're talking about, how you feel about things, your religious whatever, your political views, what you think about anything, your religious views, all of it. Every single aspect of your life. Does that sound familiar, by the way? There's several movies that have come out where they're doing this, okay? And the goal, one of their goals, supposedly, is to develop these AI systems that can understand human behavior. They can predict your actions to know what you're going to do. And basically, they're claiming that they wanted a digital assistant that can remember everything about you, basically take your consciousness and upload it. Of course, they're going to say, well, it's for your own good, it's to help you. When really it's to control you and manipulate you. So if they know that you've got an alcohol problem and they want you to go consume some alcohol, they'll start throwing alcohol advertisements at you, that kind of stuff. Okay, if you're a Christian person and they want to see you sunk because you're doing kind of some damage to the devil because you're talking about Jesus Christ, well, they're going to try to get you to get in trouble in some way because they know everything you're doing. So, so they came out with that, and people at the time were outraged about it. These civil liberties groups and privacy advocates like ACLU, they're like, listen, you can't be doing that stuff. You can't know everything about everybody. You can't be monitoring all this stuff. We don't like it. So on February 4th, 2004, DARPA officially canceled it and said, okay, we're not going to do it. The whole project has been canceled. Now, common sense ought to tell you that's a lie. But they said they did it officially. We officially canceled it. No big deal. But did you know on the same day, February 4th, 2004, a little website came up the very same day it was launched called Facebook. the very same day. So we're going to shut LifeLog off. Oh, look, just so happens some guy in his basement or in his garage came up with this thing called Facebook, and he programmed it all by himself and everything. Isn't he smart? You know, the head of Facebook, another puppet on a string, another talking head, another fall guy, another face man. Okay? Same day that they canceled LifeLog, they come out with Facebook. Now, it's not them. Oh, it's not them. It's this guy over here. It's Mark Zuckerberg. He's a genius. I popped up out of nowhere, came up with a website, just did it all on his own. Guess what Facebook does? Every single thing that LifeLog was doing. In fact, Facebook is even more ingenious or insidious, however you want to see it, however you want to look at it, depending on your point of view. LifeLog, they were trying to gather this information. They're spying and all this stuff, which they still are. The phones are recording. Everything's recording it so they can get this information. Facebook just say, hey, guess what? We'll let you enter it. We don't need to dig. We'll just keep running challenges. So I'll tell you what, why don't you upload every meal that you eat, everything that you're doing, check in everywhere that you go. Hey, I'm going to the movies. Check in. Such and such checked in at the restaurant. Oh, I had a baby the other day. Post pictures of your children and their birth dates, and all their friends can befriend them and talk. So now we know you. We know where you're at. We know what you ate. We know where you're going. We know when you check in anywhere you want to go. We know who your kids are, and their kids have all got friends. So now we know all your kids' friends. We know all your friends. In fact, you can use our little app to chat back and forth and send each other messages so we know everything you're saying. It's all being recorded right there on our app, right there on our website. You, the victim, if you will, you're the one who entered the information for them. They didn't even have to go and try to get it. You voluntarily entered it. That's what you did. And so then, I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's been a couple years ago, that, one of their challenges they came out, it's like from the grave to the such and such. So they want you to post pictures, of yourself as a child and then of yourself right now to show everybody how you've changed. Do you not realize what that is? They're wanting the information. They want a picture of you as a child, and they want a current picture and every picture in between, so they can see how you've looked all the way up to what you currently look like. And you're giving them that information. That's what Facebook is. It's a data collection. They're collecting all of your information. And you think Mark Zuckerberg is a genius? No. He's another duped minion working for the devil as a face man. And I'm sure they're filling his pocketbooks full of money to sit up there and act like he did something. Really, DARPA did it. DARPA already had it. They just changed the name to get people off their backs. And then later on, it was like 2014, something like that, they put out another article because people were asking questions again. They said, oh, no, we canceled that, and we don't have anything to do with Facebook. Even though all of our guys that were working for LifeLog, or some of them, they all went to work for Facebook. They work for Facebook now, but don't worry, they're not doing the same thing. They're not working for us on the side. They work for Facebook. They work for old Mark over there. Do you believe that? So, yeah. Basically, LifeLog shuts down. Facebook opens the same day. Obviously, it's the same software, only it allows user interface, so you can enter this stuff for them to more easily collect it. That's why I'm not on Facebook, by the way, one of the reasons. But so yeah, it's a digital collection device to get everything about you, and you enter in everything about you. That's what it is. So now we've got, instead of them having to, come up with some covert thing. Now they just have Facebook, Google, and basically every smartphone that's in your hand basically collects the same data and more that DARPA wanted to begin with. So now they have it all. So why would they want it? I mean, I can see if you're a technology program and you're wanting to come up with robots, or you're wanting to come up with the internet, and you're making, why do you care about all these people, what they're doing? Well, I'm sure the devil's behind it, and that's what he wants to know. He wants to know what's going on. So they want to be able to monitor it, and then they want to be able to go back and see what you've done, especially if they ever get their, credit score and that kind of stuff. Their, they've got a credit score, but the social credit score. If they can ever get that, lined out like they want, where they can say, hey, you said something bad 5 years ago, so you don't get this. And we have it recorded because you put it on Facebook, and Facebook never forgets, okay? Or you said it in the privacy of your own home, but your thermostat recorded it. So now we have it. Or your smartphone recorded it. Or you just happened to say that in front of Siri, and Siri overheard it. Okay, so we know exactly what you're doing and saying now. So they're monitoring everything. So I thought that was something to talk about, just because a lot of people don't know. They've never heard of LifeLog. They have no idea about it. And they sure have no clue that LifeLog became Facebook, which, data collection, that's all it is. And, of course, then people kept using it, as a social media site as well, posting things that they don't want. That's why you would get banned if you posted anything about a rattlesnake bite that people got and got killed. They kick your butt off. They don't want you on there then. You've got to be, politically correct as well now. Of course, supposedly some of that's changing. Supposedly, Mark Zuckerberg, he's real sorry about that, So, anyway, I just thought I would let you guys know about that. I thought it was pretty interesting, especially when it has to do with AI, and here we are with the HAL 9000 back in 1969, same year as the moon landing, right? So, FYI, the HAL 9000 was fake. It's a fake space movie, and the moon landing was fake space, okay? But anyway, it's just funny how we've got our Hollywood all tied in together with our facts that are really happening, if you believe it, which, of course, I don't. But anyway, I think that's it for today. Let me look here at my little deal here and see what we've got here. Okay, that's that one right there. Again, go to the website. Check out the website, and it's flatbro.com, truthseekersministry.org, and I've got a little deal here, and to remind you, it's Flatbro. Guy sent that to me. He makes these and sends these out. So go to itsflatbro.com, truthseekersministry.org, and drop me a line. You can click on the button on there and get you a free podcast sticker if you want one. If you don't, no big deal. I'll send it to you. Let's think what else. I think that's about it. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, please like it, share it, subscribe to it. Or on Spotify, same thing. Subscribe to it, follow it, however that works. Rate it. That would be nice. That way I think I'm shadow banned on about most everything, so my stuff don't get out there unless you happen to know about it, apparently. That's what I was told anyway. I was told by somebody that my deal was shadow banned. They said, man, this thing is shadow banned like you wouldn't believe. So I'm guessing they're searching for it and everything else and just can't find it. So anyway, I guess the way to get around that, or help to get around that, is to like it, share it, something. So, thanks for listening. And I've got more coming out. I've got a whole bunch lined up. So, Any questions, comments, concerns, you can get in contact with me through the website. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.